situated in Colquitt Street, which is part of Liverpool's UNESCO World Heritage Site. We're standing outside an 18th century listed building which was built in 1765 and is in Colquitt Street, which is named after one of the founding Liverpool fathers, a Scrope Colquitt, who was the city bailiff in 1765. This is a fine example of a merchant's house with attached warehousing and workshops, and I think you'll agree with me once we learn the history of Colquitt Street, the Colquitt family and this building, that our status in the World Heritage Site is really well deserved. So now we're inside the building, and this was actually once the stables for the very grand three-storey house which is adjacent to these premises. And as you can see, we've converted this into a replica of one of our favourite Spanish tapas bars in Seville in southern Spain. And as we'll learn later on, this building, Colquitt Street, and the Colquitt family actually have very strong connections with Seville, as indeed do my family. John Scrope Colquitt was a law student in Trinity College, Cambridge, and in 1794, along with a lot of the English aristocracy, they became very concerned about the wars in Europe, in particular the French fighting in Spain. So he joined up a brigade called the Foot Brigade. Now, you had to be from a very, very wealthy and affluent family to be able to afford this branch of the army. But he joined up, and off he went to Spain. And in 1811, 2,600 Englishmen fought 4,000 Frenchmen on the hill of Barossa, not far from the city of Seville, which was at that time occupied by the French. Now, the English prevailed, and John Scrope was wounded, not mortally wounded, but he was wounded. Now, such were the conditions and the ardour of the journey, etc., to Seville, that he died just before they entered Seville. Now, the people of Seville were absolutely delighted to be liberated, and they gave him an Anglican funeral and buried him on the outskirts of the town, next to the town cross, which became known as La Cruz del Inglese, or translated, the English Cross. And that was almost 200 years ago. And a gentleman called Martin, who has been in Seville for some 25 years, started asking questions about the English Cross, and nobody knew any answers. But with the double centenary coming up, he went along and he found out all the history of the Colquitt family and their connection with the La Cruz del Inglés. And it's absolutely unbelievable that this Colquitt family have this connection with Seville and are held in great esteem in Seville, and that my family too have this connection with Seville, that we should come along, buy this building, convert it into the tapas restaurant and bar. Now, the other son, Samuel Colquitt, he's very interesting too. He was an admiral in the Royal Navy, and in 1804 he was involved in the penultimate duel ever fought in England. Now, he had a friend called William Sparling, who has also got a street named after him. And William Sparling had a sister who was stepping out with a local shipbuilder called Edward Grayson. Now, one day they were in a carriage and they were on the way to the theatre, and I think they were actually travelling down Duke Street. And William Sparling asked Edward Grayson what his intentions were towards his sister. Because in those days, if you stepped out with somebody any number of times, there was an expectation to an engagement. So he declared that he had no intentions towards his sister. So he was challenged to a duel the following morning, which would take place in Dingle Vale, which in those days had a stream and trees running through it and was quite a favoured spot for a duel. Now, he asked Samuel Colquitt to be his second, and he agreed. So the three men met and had their pistols at dawn. and Sparling killed Grayson. So somebody had alerted the authorities. They came and arrested Colquitt and Sparling, and they were taken to Lancaster Assizes, where they were locked up. They came before the magistrates and were stood trial for murder. Fortunately, they were found not guilty and they were released without charge. So now here we are in the basement, and again you can see our family's connection with Seville. We call this the Bodega de Sevilla. And in a few weeks' time, this will be open as a standalone Spanish-themed cocktail bar, which is going to be known as the Bodega Bar. Work in progress. Anyway, this, when the house was originally built, would have been either workshop or warehousing. And you can see it's very much like the Albert Dock with the bricked archways. You see they go right along there. Now, we had a cleaner here who in the end refused to come into the bodega because she said every time she was brushing or cleaning in one of the arches, she could hear a piano playing. And at first she thought perhaps it was coming from upstairs or the house next door. So she went off and investigated, and there was absolutely nobody here but her. But she could hear this piano playing. And she said it sounded terribly like the 1812 overture, which would tie in with the John Scrope story, because he actually died in Seville in 1812. We have one of our favourite bars in Seville, which we've used as an inspiration for our decoration here. You can see similar tiles, similar ironwork, woodwork, etc. And here, this is a picture of the street where our son Michael actually lived, in the Santa Cruz area of Seville. And in this street, and this is really a coincidence, there was a rope maker. Now, you know, we're in RopeWalks here, and all the rope was made and it was run down to the pierhead for the ships. Well, here, this guy used to make sort of decorative rope that they used to decorate the caliccis, the small carriages that you can get horse-drawn rides all around Seville with, but which obviously must have transported people years ago. Well, there is still a trade in making these very ornate decorative ropes which people buy and they make Christmas decorations, or they still use them on horses' carriages and during the many fiestas that they have throughout the year in Seville. And actually down this street here, he used to have a series of hooks, and he'd make these ropes and they would be hooked right the way down the street, much as they used to do actually here in Duke Street, you know, in the RopeWalks.